Okay, it is 12:01. We are, I believe, streaming live Facebook. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Marrissa Lautzenheiser. I work as a program director with Rural Action in Eastern Ohio, located in Tuscarawas County. I appreciate everyone taking their lunch hour to join us. Feel free to keep eating your sandwiches and learn more about our new report, fresh off the press, as much as the press can be online, uploaded this morning to the Reclaiming Appalachia Coalition's website. I am going to take a moment. We'll go till 12:03 and then we'll jump into the actual presentation. That way it gives people time to join after all of their other morning calls. So let's hold tight for one more moment and then we'll jump into it. I want to say thank you again. We see a few more attendees coming in this morning, so we're going to give everyone a few more moments, about 1 minute, and then we're going to get started. I will give the rest of my panelists a heads up. I will be asking you to introduce yourselves on the next slide, so just be ready, panelists, to say hello. Okay, it is 12:03 and I think we are going to get going. As I said, my name is Marrissa Lautzenheiser. I work with Rural Action, and today is actually my last day with Rural Action before switching to a new position, and I cannot think of a better way to spend my last few hours than talking about this project. The work of the Reclaiming Appalachia Coalition has been some of the most rewarding and I think some of the most impactful that we've been able to do out of Rural Action in the last few years. So I think that this is just going to get bigger and better after I leave. My name is Marrissa Lautzenheiser, and I'm going to let the rest of my co-presenters, who will be the rest of the panelists in today's webinar, at least introduce themselves with their name, with their organization, and with where they are physically located at. Jacob, would you like to kick us off?
Happy to, Marrissa. Hi, all. My name is Marrissa Lautzenheiser on my screen for some reason, but I am actually Jacob Hanna. I am from Huntington, West Virginia here with Coalfield Development, which is a workforce nonprofit here. So happy to be here today. And I'll pass it to Joey, I guess.
Oh, thank you, Jacob. Yep, I'm Joey James, based in Morgantown, West Virginia with Downstream Strategies. And happy to be here. And I'll pass it to Adam.
Thanks, Joey. Hey, everybody. Adam Wells with Appalachian Voices, work out of our Norton, Virginia office at home in Abingdon, Virginia today. Robert isn't a panelist. He's helping run the slides, but I'll pass it to Robert, who's a tree right now. Maybe he'll show himself.
Oh, I hope I'm not a tree. I wish I was.
No, that was Jen. Oh, sorry, Jen's the tree.
Yeah,
thanks
no
to
worries.
Jen, our colleague running tech, who is the tree.
Good afternoon, everyone. Robert Kell, the New Economy Program Manager with Appalachian Voices, and I work with Adam out of our Norton office, and I'll pass it to Michelle.
Thank you. My name is Michelle Shively McIver. I also work for Rural Action with Marrissa. And we work out of Athens County, Ohio, but work throughout all of the Appalachian region of Southeast Ohio.
Thank you, everyone. And shout out to Jen with Appalachian Voices for being the tech and for making sure that this runs smoothly. We really appreciate it. Robert, next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to introduce the webinar, introduce our conversation today, and then each of my co-panelists are going to take the lead in talking about specific projects that really highlight the successes and the challenges that innovative mineland reclamation has faced in their respective states during this past year. The mission of the Reclaiming Appalachia Coalition is really focused around 3 goals. We want to see good, innovative reclamation projects get funded and be built. We want to increase capacity to support innovative mineland reclamation throughout the region. And finally, we want to build a community of practice throughout the region to build a network that puts just transition principles on the ground so that our entire community can interact with these principles. We are a multi-state coalition, as all of my presenters identified themselves. You see that our core states are Ohio, West Virginia, and Virginia, with technical assistance provided by Downstream Strategies. However, through our mini grant program and through our technical assistance, we work throughout the Appalachian region, throughout the country, wherever abandoned coal mines can be found, and our influence is even spreading internationally, thanks to some calls for assistance that we've had in states or in places as diverse as South Africa and India during this past year. And as our impact has grown, our approach is changing as well. Jacob will talk a little bit more about this at the end, but we have been approached and we have agreed to work with the Central Appalachian Network to help facilitate their new ecological restoration working group. This working group is made up of a diverse coalition of stakeholders, and we have been meeting monthly to have conversations, not just around mineland reclamation, but around the much larger term of ecological restoration. He'll give some more information about that as towards the end of our conversation. And I just want to point out that we do hold these webinars annually. Our reports and a lot of resources are available on our website. So please check out reclaimingappalachia.org. And that is where you will find a copy of this report that we are going to be discussing today, as well as some of our previous ones. And one of the successes that I want to start the conversation out with, and Robert, you can do next slide, is as of this year, our coalition has provided technical assistance to projects that have secured over $45 million worth of funding on the ground in these 3 states and around the region. So I think that that number is incredibly impressive for a motley group such as ourselves. And I think that our success is only going to continue as the federal landscape shifts and as even more money and attention gets thrown at reclamation projects throughout the Appalachian region. Next slide. We could not do this work if not for our partners and the funding that we've received to support our coalition. I want to specifically call out the Just Transition Fund, the Central Appalachian Network, the New York Community Trust, Carbon 180, and the Act Now Coalition. These funders have given us assistance since the beginning, and we would not nearly be where we are if not for their long-term investments and really trust in us to provide assistance throughout the region. So I especially appreciate their investment and their trust that in what we have to offer. Next slide. Okay, without further ado, I would like to introduce, just click it again, Robert. I love PowerPoint animations and I don't think they're used enough. The newest Reclaiming Appalachia Coalition annual report, National to Neighborhoods, Catalyzing Opportunities for Coal Impacted Communities. This is a pretty hefty lift. You're looking at a report that if you print it out will be at least 40 pages, and I would recommend everyone read it right before they are falling asleep tonight. But if you are specifically focused on a certain state or region, you can search by keywords. We organize our projects by state So you can open it up and look at different states, look at different project profiles, and you will also find information, what Joey is going to talk about at the end, about our mini grant projects and about the regional impacts we are having outside of our core states. At the beginning, we talk about our economic impact analysis, got 5 on it, that was completed early last year. And we also talked about some of the other outsized issues that our region is facing, specifically looking at post-Samakra coal reclamation and coal mine bonding issues that very well may result in challenges as large, if not larger, than legally defined abandoned mine lands. Without further ado, I would like to just take one moment to talk about how we define innovative mine reclamation, and then Jacob is going to take us away with focusing on the West Virginia projects. We throw around the term innovative mine reclamation a lot, but if you poll 10 people, you'll probably get 10 different answers as to what innovative means. So I wanted to outline the 6 caveats that we as a group have agreed really define and make a reclamation project innovative. Innovative mine reclamation projects go above and beyond the legal responsibilities and requirements for mine reclamation to create sites that are primed for sustainable development, native ecosystem restoration, or both. They create projects that are appropriate for the communities that they are located in. They are inclusive of many different community voices, and they are responsive to public opinions. They do not cause harm to the place they are located in or to the planet. They create financially viable projects that will be solvent past their grant terms. And finally, they are projects that introduce new and novel concepts to our region that have proven successful elsewhere. The projects that you're going to hear about in this report meet one, if not all, of those requirements. And I think that there are only going to be more examples of very neat place-based solutions to the challenges that abandoned mine lands pose. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jacob. Next slide, please, Robert. And I think we're going to jump into West Virginia.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marrissa. What a great context for innovative reclamation here and how we're trying to embody that with our work. And so what you see in front of you is a project that is aiming at specifically trying to fulfill and live out that definition. And so what I'm going to highlight for you today, the report covers more projects, multiple projects, but for brevity's sake, we're going to talk about sort of 2 different initiatives, one that has some challenges and hurdles to overcome, and one project that highlights more of the successes and sort of payoffs that we've been working for. And so for this one here, this is some of the challenges. And so this is an innovative reclamation project in Mingo County, West Virginia, known as the sort of the billion-dollar coal field of Appalachia. A lot of dilapidation, a lot of abandoned mine land sites there. And our crew, our nonprofit, does workforce development through reclamation. We have a sort of an intersection between agritourism. We're repurposing the soil and trying to make it more permeable and do some plantings, rotational grazing of livestock that then add nutrients back to the soil. And we're building cabins and wellness centers there as well for folks who are coming out of recovery to have a training space to learn some of these on-the-job skill sets to be able to be engaged and employed in the local workforce. And then all of it's going to be powered by renewable energy, so solar mounted on top of former mine land sites. So it's really trying to intersect all of those cool pieces together in one spot. And because that's so ambitious, it's tough to get funded. And so we've been having to chip away at this piece by piece, year by year. And it unfortunately has just not been able to compete with traditional AMLR funding applications, even though it has a very robust prospectus and business plan, multiple matching funding sources, different components that can be sequenced. Some of the traditional funding sources aren't really quite geared for all of these innovative approaches. And in fact, more so, there's a lot of competition for other projects that are getting funded that are more traditional tourism, more traditional infrastructure, like investing in pipe infrastructure or building an institution on a former strip mine site. So it's tough to overlay innovation and innovative thinking on top of sort of systems that maybe aren't quite designed to fulfill that. So if you skip to the next slide, what we did was we said, all right, fine, we'll come up with our own funding source to make this stuff happen. And so we banded together as a nonprofit with 50 different other organizations in West Virginia and Central Appalachia, and created the Act Now Coalition, which is funded through the Economic Development Administration. It was able to pull down about $88.8 million. That's combining the non-federal match that we're bringing into this as well. And a large portion of this is focused on, you guessed it, sustainable mineland reclamation. And so it's really not only answering our own call, but realizing there are so many other people that are just sort of limited by the tools around us that they can't make projects come to fruition in an innovative way if we don't have the tools to make that happen, from a funding point of view, from a technical assistance point of view, et cetera. And so this is a really great opportunity to catalyze those across 21 different southern counties in West Virginia. And then also alongside that, have curriculum and technical assistance and work with partners like West Virginia University, the Nature Conservancy, et cetera, to develop sort of what we're calling a Zillow for mine lands. So you're putting in mine lands in one end and it's spitting out recommendations for what that mine site can be used for in an innovative way. So one site on top of a mine site may be perfectly oriented for solar. Another one between haulers may be a bit more oriented if it's close to a community for something else. And so that's what we're trying to come up with is an algorithm to help us identify how to create those solutions in a way that's tangible and real and informed. So it's a really exciting opportunity. It was just launched at the end of last year, and we're going to be deploying it here in the next along the next 4 years. We're deploying it now, but it's going to be happening for the next 4 years and in perpetuity. So we're really excited about that. And I will stop my time there and pass it to the next presenter. Thank you.
Okay, I'm next. Hey, everybody, again, Adam Wells with Appalachian Voices. I'll start by saying thanks, Marrissa, for all that you brought to our coalition. Good luck on your new journey there. We'll miss you. And then also thanks to our funders, New York Community Trust, Just Transition Fund, Carbon 180, others. And thanks to all you all joining us, partners. We couldn't do this without a broad community practice. It's just awesome to be able to do this work with each of you. So I'm going to go through 3 projects that Appalachian Voices is working on in Southwest Virginia, starting with the one in Daint, which we've been talking about this since we began this work back in 2016 or 17, a long time ago. The key theme here with Daint that is just so essential is it all starts with a master plan. There has been a master plan that was developed through assistance with the Center for Community Design Assistance out of Virginia Tech. The renderings that you see here come from that master plan. We've had that in place for like 5 years now, and I've just been working down that list of projects, matching funding with the vision that came out of a robust community engagement process. So really, like, this model of get a master plan in place that's built through robust engagement with residents is one that we're trying to replicate across our region, and it's really working well in Daint. Right now, we're trying to get funding for the steam building, which is was an old power plant and is trying to be transformed into a workforce development center. The keynote here is that we've gotten some funding preliminarily for design from the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development, or DHCD, Industrial Revitalization Fund, or IRF, DHCD IRF. We put in an application for implementation with the IRF last year, didn't get it funded. We've actually put in a congressional appropriation request for this project that has gotten past the first stage of vetting. We'll see if it comes through. So that would be a new funding source that we haven't worked with in this particular case yet. So it could be a cool way to make this vision come true. Next slide, please. So moving on to talk about the Three Rivers Destination Center, an interesting coal nexus here. I guess to go back to Dane, you don't need to go back to slides, but Dane is surrounded by coal mines. It was once the headquarters of the Clinchfield Coal Company, so very much a strong coal nexus there. The Destination Center is in the town of St. Paul, which is surrounded broadly by coal mines, but there's no immediately adjacent abandoned mine land. But the Destination Center would be located on a piece of kind of marginal unused brownfield land that was once a runaway truck ramp for coal trucks. So a pretty unique coal impact nexus here. Of note, this is, I think, the most stacked in terms of funding sources project that we're working with right now. And actually what's here is just a snapshot. There's 13 total funding sources that have been committed, secured. The total project budget for this destination center is about $6 million. We just received word from the Economic Development Administration that we did not get the $3 million request that we put in there. We have been waiting to really launch construction until we found out about EDA. So the pivot here is to take a phased approach to construction, recognizing that we need to get a lot of this money spent and get a building in place. So we're just charging right ahead and breaking up into phases, and are confident that we'll find that extra $3 million before too long and have some ideas about where to look. More in the report, but going to keep moving to hit our last topic here, which is a brand new big idea, carbon removal. This connects back to, for folks who have been tracking our work, about a year, 2 years ago now, we released this Repairing the Damage report. Marrissa mentioned it earlier in the webinar, that quantifies and qualifies just the amount of reclamation that is at risk at the moment from the coal company bankruptcy crisis that we're in right now. So I'll put a link in the chat to a blog that goes into more detail, and there's more detail in our report. But at a high level, the concept is, can we address the very local challenge of bond forfeiture of, there's no money to reclaim the mines, basically. That's the local challenge. The global challenge, of course, is climate change. We need to suck as much carbon out of the atmosphere that exists already as we possibly can to avoid the worst of climate change. So the question is, can we tap into the voluntary carbon market by doing a forestry reclamation approach and sell those carbon credits and make enough money to pay for the reclamation? That's the premise. I mean, we know that we can plant trees on mine sites and that they will sequester carbon. That research has been done. That's not the experiment. The real experiment here is one of markets. Can we, in a way that is consistent with our just transition principles and our values of equity and community leadership, can we make this work? Can we tap into that voluntary carbon market in a way that will generate enough revenue to pay for their reclamation that otherwise wouldn't happen? So I think we could probably do a whole webinar on this subject. So we'll kind of tease it here and encourage folks to dig into the content in the report. If anyone has more questions, feel free to reach out to me. We are actively seeking engagement and input, both at the local level from our community partners as well as practitioners kind of regionally. So really encourage dialogue if you're interested in chatting about this. One important distinction here is we're talking about biological carbon removal. So using forest carbon sequestration or other biological processes. What we're not talking about is carbon capture from power plant, point source carbon capture. That's not what we're talking about. And then there's another technology called direct air capture that's basically a giant vacuum cleaner, not attached to a particular point source the way that carbon capture is, but uses more technology-based methods to remove carbon. So again, not talking about those two things, just talking about biological carbon removal. So with that, I think I'm passing it to Michelle to talk about Ohio.
Sounds great. Thanks all. So I want to jump into our Ohio projects, actually backing up a little bit, just talking about a major shift in the Ohio AMLR program this year. In the past, ODNR has worked, ODNR staff has actually worked closely with Rural Action and with other community organizations to create these projects and move them forward through project development, and done most of the engineering, if not all the engineering for these projects in-house. This year, they pivoted to a competitive grants process, which has a lot of benefits and it is very exciting, but does put that extra responsibility of the contracting, overseeing construction and engineering onto the project applicant. So in some ways, the requests were larger this year because all of the applicants were having to put those added costs into their proposals, so that a lot of the entities are smaller municipalities or nonprofits that don't have an engineer in-house to provide those types of activities or to manage construction of a project like that. So there were a lot more consulting firms that were brought into this process through this year's applications, and we expect that would continue into future years. So just the response to this was incredible. And I think it really blew ODNR away. Their review process was a lot longer than they initially expected, because they actually received 24 letters of intent for potential applications back in the spring of last year. Those project costs would have totaled $67 million. And there's only $17 million available in last year's round. So it was sure to be very competitive. The letters of intent went into full proposals. Out of those 24 LOIs, 17 applicants put in the full proposal. And that totaled $47 million. So still, $30 million worth of projects that are planned and applications ready to go and be reapplied in future years. Ultimately, Ohio DNR was able to fund 6 projects with the $17 million. 5 of those 6 were focused on outdoor recreation, 2 of them specifically on lodging, and 1 on community improvement. So as far as geographically, they were spread through 6 different counties in Southeast Ohio. And only 1 of the project recipients had received funding before, and that was the Bailey's mountain bike trail. All of the projects that were funded also had leveraged funding. 1 of them only had $100,000, but 4 of the funded projects had over $1 million in leverage funds, which feels important to lift up, because a lot of the applicants that were not successful in this first round of competitive grants did not really have any leverage funding to speak of. So to jump into the first project we're going to highlight was Project Success, the Hotel MacArthur in Vinton County. The RAC committee awarded a mini grant to this group of partners in June of 2021. They initially were declined for funding under the AMLR funding in Ohio, but encouraged to apply through the RFP process this year. And the biggest addition to their project from previous applications or efforts to get this funded was adding what they call the Brickyard Preserve. Initially, they were really focused on just the historic hotel building, which is in downtown MacArthur, right on US 50. And MacArthur is a very small town. The Vinton County, just to give you some context here, it's very rural in Ohio. In that part of Ohio, this entire county did not have a grocery store for 4 years, from 2013 to 2017. So there has been a major effort in the last 5-6 years to bring businesses back to the county and to encourage recreation and tourism opportunities. It's certainly a struggling county, struggling to keep the population and provide job opportunities. So this is a really exciting project. It was funded through this first competitive round. They were also able to leverage over $1 million, including Clean Ohio funds that were used by the Park District to purchase what they're calling the Brickyard Preserve, which is the site of an old brick company that also had mining impacts prior to 1977. So the Clean Ohio money was used to purchase the actual property, funding for the hotel renovation. Some of that was actually written into the state capital budget this past year, which is really exciting. And one of the things I think that made this successful is they have a lot of partners. They have a lot of investment from the community. The Visitors Bureau actually purchased the building itself of the hotel, which has served a lot of purposes over the years to the community. It's housed a local newspaper. It's been a saloon. It's been restaurants. It was part of the Underground Railroad. So there's a lot of history and there's a lot of energy in the community to save this building and also to give it a new purpose, which is a visitor center for the county that would also have lodging and a restaurant and kind of be a starting point for all of the other exciting recreation opportunities that are coming up through the county. Also in Vinton County, there a few years back, there was another AMLR project, the Moonville Rail Trail, that was funded. So being able to also connect these AMLR projects together in these areas that have been most impacted by mining has been definitely a focus in Ohio. You can move on to the next one, Robert. We also wanted to highlight this was a challenge. This project was not funded through this round of AMLR projects, although the city of New Philadelphia is very interested in reapplying this year when that RFP comes out. This was a project that would be taking an abandoned railway that goes from New Philadelphia, which is the county seat of Tuscarawas County. It is a small city, to a small village about 4 miles away, Roswell. And historically, the railroad connected Roswell and New Philadelphia. There was mining, connected miners and coal were going back and forth on a daily basis. The rail is now abandoned and was purchased by the city of New Philadelphia, and they have written this project into their recreation, their citywide recreation plan to increase biking opportunities and recreation opportunities. The issues, and I assisted the city of New Philadelphia in trying to pull together information for this project, and I think that we had economic data from their citywide plan, but we did not have, I don't think, specific enough information to really show the economic opportunity for this particular piece of that plan. And there were no leveraged funds available at the time we put the application in. The city has agreed to take on all maintenance costs associated with the project, but there were no other leveraged funds available. So they're looking to regroup and get some more partnerships there, bring in the village of Roswell a little bit more, and reapply for funding this following year. But I do think they have a good chance, moving forward. And in Ohio, anyway, there has been a really a good investment in outdoor recreation, and the recognition from DNR that is a really important economic driver in Appalachian, Ohio. So thank you.
Great. So as you kind of heard throughout this webinar, in addition to our boots on the ground support of projects, like the ones that we've talked about, the Reclaiming Appalachia Coalition has completed a number of side research and data projects over the last year. And so one such project was our assessment of the economic impact of the Abandoned Mine Land Economic Revitalization Program. And so we produced a report. It's called Got 5 on it, Economic Impacts and Observations of the Abandoned Mine Land Economic Revitalization Program 5 years in. Again, this report is available on reclaimingappalachia.org. But in this assessment, we dug into over $430 million in grant commitments across different Appalachian states. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Robert. And so this involved really digging into the weeds on specific innovative mine reclamation projects to understand first where they are in their implementation process, and objectively assess the success of each project. So here is just a picture of our tracker. This involved basically developing trackers for projects in each of the states that we were assessing. And here's a picture of our tracker in West Virginia. And as you can see, most AMLR projects are still in the pre-construction development phase, and very few projects have actually made it through to completion. Next slide, please. So by tracking projects this way, we've been able to make a number of observations on the Abandoned Mineland Economic Revitalization Program. So for example, here is a distribution of grant awards by size. So as you can see, the vast majority of AMLR projects are less than $4 million in total cost. But there are a number of notable outliers, including some very large awards in that $12 million range. Next slide, please. So again, by digging in on all of these grants that have been awarded, we've identified 4 distinct phases of project development that AMLR projects follow. And so the first phase is the application phase. So this is when you are either working within your organization or with grant writing consultant to submit your AMLR grant proposal. And the milestone there is that submission to your state agency. That state agency then selects a grant for approval to OSMRE, and it goes to OSMRE for vetting, and you will get preliminary approval. At that preliminary approval point, you can begin your pre-construction planning. So this involves things like completing your environmental due diligence for the project, going through the pre-construction design phase for your project, getting your construction plans together so that you can get authorization to proceed from the Office of Surface Mining to actually construct or implement your AMLR grant. So what we identified was that many projects have stalled out, as I pointed out before, in that planning phase. And particularly, we've noticed that a number of organizations that have received AMLR grants are having difficulty working through the environmental due diligence, process, completing all of your NEPA review documents. Next slide, please. So we did notice some variability in the number of days a project takes to get through that planning process, that planning phase, depending on the type of undertaking that it is. So here's just some examples of recreation and residential developments, water and sewer systems, manufacturing facilities, just strictly reclamation and land development, and education facilities. As you can see here, based on our data, education facilities most reliably get through the planning process the quickest. Next slide, please. So all of the data we collected on how money is distributed and spent throughout AMLR projects was used to conduct an economic impact assessment of AMLR distributions in Kentucky, Ohio, Virginia, and West Virginia. So looking at the $410 million allocated to those states between fiscal year 2016 and 2021, we found that the grant awards will produce in the ballpark of $750 million or $715 million in regional economic activity, provide $250 million in wages to regional workers, and support just over 4,000 jobs. So of course, these impacts can only be achieved if we actually move projects to construction, and projects aren't, cut short in that planning phase. And with a significant number of projects stalled out in that planning phase, direct project assistance and community capacity building, like the assistance provided by the Reclaiming Appalachia Coalition, is really more important than ever. So as we move forward, if there is any help that folks need on mine land reuse or redevelopment projects, they should not hesitate to reach out to the Reclaiming Appalachia Coalition organizations, because we have experience moving these projects through that planning phase and through implementation. Together we can achieve this 4,000 jobs number, but only together. So thank you very much, and I believe I am turning it over to Jacob.
Thank you, Joey. Just to sort of culminate to some of the collective efforts there that Joey's talking about too, as a region, as a coalition, as a network of partners, we don't want this conversation around innovative reclamation just to live within our small band of folks here in this call, but we want to really have an opportunity for there to be a platform for learning and sharing what works, what doesn't work, and really showcase how we can not reinvent the wheel and instead replicate and expand a lot of the great projects that we are seeing happen. And so part of that effort is what you see here on your screen today. So the Central Appalachia Network is over 100 different organizations it's in the title, Central Appalachia. And it has working groups and sort of think tanks around renewable energy, reuse and upcycling, agriculture, and now we're stepping in as well and housing part of our conversation within this coalition as well, with what you see circled in red as ecological restoration. So you don't have to be a practitioner of 30 years in this field to be a part of the conversation. You can be a community member that's interested, or a business or a nonprofit or a county or city, whoever, and you can be a part of these conversations and brainstorm with us and ideate on what you want to see happen in your neck of the woods, or just in general for policy, governments, funding, etc. We want to democratize this conversation and have it in a way that benefits more people than just the organizations and businesses that have the staff and capacity to pursue AMLR grants. And so this is a really fun opportunity for us. We've gotten 2 meetings down. The third one was this morning, actually. And so we're really excited to have that kicking off and moving forward. We're meeting once a month for about an hour virtually. And the next one is May 19th at 11 a.m. So visit the website at Central Appalachia Network, and you can find us there and connect with myself or Robert Kells, and we'll get you connected. And I'll pass it off.
Thank you, Jacob, and thank you everyone for your participation today and for such great overview of all of the projects happening in your state. We are right on time, and we definitely have a couple minutes for a Q&A round. So I would encourage any of the attendees today, please feel free to drop a question or a comment in either the chat or in the Q&A function on Zoom, and we would be happy to address them. I wanted to thank Jared, who asked a question if there was an easy way to find the status of mine reclamation, the status of what sites have or have not been reclaimed. And as I shared in the chat, I don't think that there is a simple, one-stop shop for the whole country, which would be very nice if OSMRE, or another entity could help provide that. I think it really depends on each state to provide that information to those who request it. So I would encourage you to reach out to your state agency and ask them for the GIS layers that you are specifically looking for. However, I want to open it up. Any of Joey, Adam, Michelle, or Jacob, if you have any other expertise in could direct Jared, feel free to hop in here.
I think you answered that really well, Marrissa. It really depends on the state. Unfortunately, there are a few, I don't want to call them secret, but not well-known data sets that I can point you to. Jared, if you reach out to me directly, and I can learn a little bit more about what exactly you're looking for.
And then I will throw it back to Joey. We actually have a question that came in from Ryan, and there's some interest in hearing more about the methodology for estimating the economic impact of AMLR projects. I will say we have a wonderful colleague who works with Joey named Dale, who helps build out a lot of the models. But Joey, I think that is definitely within your wheelhouse. Don't take us over 1 o'clock, please. I know how excited you get about this.
Yeah, that's certainly something that I could talk all day about, and I would invite you to read our Got 5 on it report. It will go into more detail about the methodology, but the short answer is, we took a representative subset of the AMLR projects and dug into them. Basically did a case study evaluation of them to understand more about what things projects are spending money on and at what time in the project implementation process they are spending that money, and essentially taking all of that in together and doing a few other things, we were able to estimate the economic impact. So again, I would invite you to read the report. It'll go into a whole lot more detail than what I'm able to give here.
Thank you, Joey. And thank you to everyone who has asked questions. I believe that Amanda put something in chat that many of us are thinking through. Amanda asked if there was a way to bundle multiple small projects into one larger project. Any recommendations on how to do that to make a large enough project for union contractors to bid on? I think that this is an approach that many of us are watching our states look at, and I can speak to at least Ohio, not specifically through the AMLR program, but through projects that they plan to fund through the bipartisan infrastructure law, through the Bill Act. This is exactly the approach that Ohio is taking, is looking at tying together multiple small projects that are in the same geographic area to make one pretty substantial, $5+ million project that then is large enough to gain the attention of a larger union contractor. And that really speaks to one of the goals that we try to lift up, which is life affirming, living wage jobs are being protected and are being employed by these types of projects. So we are specifically interested in projects large enough to attract union attention. Anyone else on the panel want to speak to either seeing this happen or suggestions on how it can happen more often? Joey, you unmuted.
Yes. Very, very good question, Amanda. And I'll just note, speaking to the fundability of different projects, I think bundling ideas and smaller projects into a larger project is a great way to get AMLR projects funded. I think as noted by Michelle, our experience in Benton County was that the hotel project alone was not particularly fundable through the AMLR grant. And it just happened that right down the road was this brickyard, and that project probably was not fundable by itself either. But together, as an area-wide tourism improvement project, they were fundable through the AMLA program. And so that's definitely I think a great strategy for getting some of these federal funds that are out there floating around.
I would just also add to that as well, to sort of on the flip of that, going back to what I talked about before with our high wall project, it's sort of like a bunch of smaller ones bundled together on one site. And for us, that makes a lot of sense to sort of pilotize all of those ideas in one location. But I think that just for West Virginia's administration, for AMLR, that worked against us. And so, I think for them, they're looking for very much like a more singular focus with scale, at least for that project. And that could change. That could change any given day of the week. But there's definitely, there's a pro and con to it. And I echo what I've seen, what the successes of what Joey's outlining and Marissa's outlining, and also just be aware that it could also like conflate the focus of the application to where whoever's reviewing it and approving it may not be able to follow along.
And I will I can just add as well that this is something that I'm particularly concerned about, because in some of the smaller communities where I've worked, a $500,000 project is substantial, and it can be really community changing if done in a good way. But if it's not large enough to get the attention of funders or to get the attention of contractors, then it's not going to happen. So I think specifically one of the graphs that Joey showed, looking at the distribution of grant awards by millions of dollars, I really hope to see our state agencies pay a little bit more attention, and maybe even specifically set aside a pot of funding that would specifically focus on those smaller, $100,000 to $900,000 projects that may financially not add up to a lot, but could really change the trajectory of a small rural community. So I think that that's a really important question to ask, Amanda, and I hope that you keep asking it of our agencies. Okay, I have not seen any more questions come in through chat and or through the Q&A section. So I think that the panelists can stay on for a few more moments, but otherwise, I wanted to thank everyone for their time and attention this afternoon. As you can see there, we have a couple recorded webinars. We have all of our previous reports available on our website at reclaimingappalachia.org. I would encourage you to bookmark that page and watch for any updated resources that we do release. When we do have opportunities available for our mini grant programs and or through other webinars or resources, we share it on that website. So definitely click that and stay up to date with us. Join Jacob and Robert at the upcoming CAN Ecological Restoration Call coming up in May, and reach out to all of us if you have projects that you want to discuss or questions about the programs that we talked about here. I have nothing but hope that the projects that everyone on this call will work on will result in a stronger, more resilient Appalachian region. Thank you for your time, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Bye all.